and we are on air. This is the Grammatist, the show that sharpens your language skills for the corporate world and beyond. It's Monday at 5:30, the perfect time for us to upgrade our business vocabulary. All right, so today we'll bring together the final trio of our alphabet series, which is X, Y, and Z. So these letters might seem rare, but in business, they stand for execution, yielding, and zeroing in on what matters. So we'll focus only on words and terms that are useful in corporate life, in maybe in your emails, meetings, reports, and presentations. By the end of our show today, you will be able to use X, Y, and Z words to sound more precise, analytical, and strategic. So let's begin with the X side of the business language. So in corporate English, the X often does not appear in the beginning of the word, but in the middle. So it's spelled with EX, and it is spelled as X. It's pronounced as X. So these words are common in analysis, planning, and decision making. Let's start off with a few core X words for business. The first word we have is example, which is a specific case that illustrates a point. So when you're trying to explain a point with an illustration, you will be explaining them with an example. The next word is except, which is spelled EXCEPT. So when you're not including something, when you're trying to mention something other than the given points already, you will use the word except. So for example, we can say all the regions meet our target except the South Zone, meaning other than the South Zone. The next word we have for today is exact, which is spelled EXACT, which means precise or accurate. So for example, you can say we need to work on exact numbers to achieve a target. The next word is expand, which means to make something larger or more extensive. So for example, you can say we need to expand our project into new markets. The next word we have is explain, which means to make something clear or understandable for someone. So for example, you can say, can you please explain the reason for this issue? So that means they're asking for more clarity to understand more details. The next word we have is explore, which means to investigate something or to examine the possibilities of something. So for example, you can say we should explore all options for available vendors. The next word we have is expert, which means a person who is having an advanced knowledge or skill. So for example, we can say the expert review helps us in reducing our risks. The next word we have is experience, which means knowledge gained over time. So when someone gains knowledge through their work over time, duration that they have spent gaining the knowledge, that is called as experience. And so sometimes it also refers to what our customers are going through. What are they feeling? What are their emotions? So for example, you can say the customer experience is a key differentiator for us. Our next word is experiment, which means a test to discover something. So when you're trying to identify something or discover something and you run a few tests for that, that is called as an experiment. The next word we have is express, which means to communicate something clearly. So when you're sharing something and you're communicating something, you can use the word express. So for example, you can say, please express your concerns directly during our meeting. The last word we have in X is X factor. This is the letter X hyphened with the word factor. So this is a special quality that makes someone or something stand out. So when you're talking about a unique quality of someone or something, then you can use the word X factor. So for example, we can say her ability to simplify something is her X factor, or our ability to learn quickly is my X factor. Okay, so these are a few X words that will help you in examining, in explaining and executing plans with clarity. Now let's move on to the letter Y, a letter of yield, year, and your contributions. So we'll go through a few words that are central to goals, performance, and accountability. The first word we have is year. which is a period of 12 months. So whenever we're talking about something that's happening over a duration of 12 months, you can refer to it as a year. So for example, we can say this year's target focuses on retention and growth. The next word we have is yield, which is spelled YIELD, which means to produce or to provide a result. It can also refer to the amount of something produced. So for example, we can say the new process should yield faster turnaround time. That means it should provide faster turnaround time. The next word is your, spelled YOUR. So when you're talking about something that is belonging to you, you will use the word your. So for example, we can say your role is critical in this project. The next word is yet, which means nevertheless or something up to now. So when we're referring to a new point, something that hasn't happened until now, we can use the word yet. So for example, we can say we haven't closed the deal yet, meaning until now it is not closed. The next word is yearly. So when we're talking about any event that is happening once a year, that is repeating once a year, then you can use the word yearly. So for example, you can say the yearly review is next month. The next word is year end, which means the end of a year. It could be a calendar year or a financial year. So when talking about an end of a year that we consider, we'll use the word year end. The next word we have is yardstick. Yardstick is a standard for measurement. So for example, we can say the customer satisfaction is our yardstick for success. So it means we are considering customer satisfaction as our measurement of success. The next word we have is young talent, which refers to new employees or someone who's very early in their career. So for example, I can say we need to invest in young talent and build long-term strength with them. Okay, so these were a few why words that can help us talk clearly about our role, results, and our yearly goals. Now let's move on to the letter Z, which talks about zooming in, zoning in, and zero excuses. So these are words that that are powerful whenever you want to talk about sounding focused, modern, and action oriented. We'll start off with a few core Z words that we use in business. The first word is zero, the number zero. And whenever we're talking about nothing, we're trying to refer to nothing or something that is not there. Even then you can talk about zero. So for example, we can say we aim for zero defects, meaning we're making sure there are no defects at all. The next word we have in Z is zone. So when you're talking about an area or a particular region for a specific purpose, in that case, you will talk about zone. So for example, you can say each sales zone has its own quarterly target. We were talking about each region of sales. Our next word is Zoom. So Zoom, we all know, is a video meeting platform similar to Google Meet, but it also means to move quickly. So when you're talking about quick movements, you can use the word zoom. So for example, we can say we will zoom through the agenda to save time, meaning we'll just quickly refer to it. Our next word is zest, which is spelled Z-E-S-T. This means great enthusiasm or great energy. So for example, we can say you bring real zest to your project. We're talking about you bringing great energy to your project. The next word is zilch, which is spelled Z-I-L-C-H. This is an informal way of saying zero or nothing. So instead of saying we have zero effects or we have zero issues, we can say there was zilch, which is an informal way of saying zero. The next word we have is zippy. Zippy is when talking about something that is fast and lively, you can use the word zippy. So for example, you can say we need to keep our updates zippy and to the point, meaning it has to be fast. The next word we have is zenith. Zenith is the highest point or the peak of something. So whenever you're referring to the highest point during your presentation or during your reports, you can use the word zenith. So for example, we can say the company has reached its zenith in terms of revenue, meaning we have reached our highest point in revenue. The next word we have is zero-based budgeting. So when we're talking about planning some budgets and the budget starts from zero for each cycle, that is called as zero-based budgeting. So whenever you're planning a new budget, you'll always start it off with a zero than any other number. So for example, we can say zero-based budgeting forces us to justify every cost. The next word we have is zero tolerance. You would have heard this a lot during HR inductions or any policies from HR. Zero tolerance means that there is no acceptance of certain behaviors. No matter what, they will not accept even a single attempt of such behaviors. That is when they will use the word zero tolerance. So, for example, you can say we have a zero tolerance for data breaches. So this is an IT policy that we do follow where data breach is not allowed at all. Not a single excuse will be given. The next word we have is zone in. So when you're trying to focus on something closely, you're trying to concentrate on something, you can use the word zone in. So for example, you can say we need to zone in on the top priorities for this quarter. The next is zone out. Zone out is when you're losing focus, you're not able to pay attention, you're not able to concentrate, then you will say I have zoned out. So for example, we can say I zoned out during the client call. I missed a few points. The next word we have is Z-score. Z-score is a statistical measurement that we use for risk and performance analysis. So for example, you can say the Z-score helps us assess the risk profile. So when you're running a measurement of risk and performance analysis, then that score, that measurement is called as a Z-score. The next word we have is zero defect. So when you're talking about a quality goal with no errors, that is called as zero defect. So for example, you can say our target is zero defect output for all our clients. The next word is zero sum. So when you're talking about a situation where one person's gain is exactly the same as another person's loss. So let's say I'm comparing me with someone else and whatever I'm gaining and the other person is losing equally. In that case, it is a zero sum. It is not a win-win. No one is winning. So when one person is gaining, the other person is completely losing. So in team, that is not allowed. So that is called as zero sum. All right. So these were a few Z words that help us in zeroing up priorities, zooming through execution, and also operating with zero tolerance to avoid any errors. That brings us to the end of our XYZ and also the end of our alphabet series. Together, X, Y, and Z stands for executing, yielding, and zooming forward. Thank you for tuning in to Grammatist on DC Live, where we care, we share, and we're on air. I'll see you next Monday at 5:30 p.m. Until then, execute with clarity, yield measurable results, and zero in on whatever truly matters for you.
Thanks, Moni. It was a wonderful series from A to Z successfully, and we have completed up to Z vocabularies. And happy for doing that on DC Live, and hope people will listen to those videos on the playlist of DC Live YouTube. Thanks, Moni. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shileka.